Get out! Dark bleatings, everyone. Today we are talking about author, reviewer, reader relationships, whether authors should stay out of reviewer and reader spaces or not, and some other general things that I think can help maybe build relationships between authors, reviewers and readers in a appropriate and sort of like non-confrontational, non-threatening kind of way. So let's start off with the authors and reviewers spaces, because this is the thing I wanted to talk about the most. I've seen so many videos about this recently, about authors appearing in like reviewer and reader spaces, places like Goodreads or in book groups on the internet, things like that, and sort of conversing with readers or commenting on reviews that have been left of their books and things like that. And there are loads of really strong opinions floating around about this, and I've talked a little bit in previous videos. I've touched on this, and I've talked about it a bit before, but what really wanted to talk about is community today, and what worries me a little bit about this conversation at the moment is that generally and typically speaking, the opinion that I'm seeing is that authors should get out of reader spaces, that authors shouldn't be participating in any conversations and things like that. I've watched lots of really interesting videos about this, and I've appreciated a lot of people's point of views, and I'm not saying anyone's wrong or right. I'm just sort of weighing in myself now on my personal opinion. As a book reviewer, that's what most people, if anyone does know me, that's what most people know me for. And when I meet new authors, that's normally what they know me as a book reviewer. But I am also an indie author, so I am somebody that asks for reviews, and I get in touch with the reviewers requesting reviews of my own stuff as well. So I'm coming at this kind of like from both sides on my preferences about how I communicate with people as a reviewer, and also what I hope to get from reviewers as an author. So I have I guess this is a slightly controversial opinion, but not in an inflammatory way, I hope. I don't think that authors need to stay out of reviewer and reader spaces, because most authors are also readers, and indie authors that rely on getting book reviews on, say, Amazon and Goodreads or on websites, and indie authors that like really know the impact and the importance of having book reviews to promote their work, I would assume that many of them will go ahead and leave book reviews themselves on Amazon and other spaces, post about them on social media if they're things that they've read that they've liked, or things they want to share critiques about. So this idea that authors need to stay out of these spaces feels a little weird to me, because I won't stay out of those spaces as an author, but I'm also a reviewer, so I don't know if maybe my perception of what I should be doing is a bit skewed on this. What I do agree with, though, is that authors should not be commenting on reviews of their own books, unless maybe the person who posted the review has tagged the author in it, which I would view as an invitation to comment on it. But even if you are commenting, I do think that as a general rule of thumb, for the most part, the only thing you really should be saying to someone who's reviewed your work is thank you very much for taking the time to read and review my work, even if it's a negative review or a really critical review or something like, or don't say anything at all. I think that this conversation is circulating and has kept coming up recently because of authors behaving badly, and I put that just like in commas, not that I like disagree that this is bad behavior, but just there's a whole range of things that people say about behavior. I would agree that authors getting really angry about negative reviews and weighing in a public post that the reviewer has posted, arguing with the reviewer, I would say that is bad behavior. I don't think that that's a good look for the author. And also I would agree with reviewers that say that this will put people off reviewing your work or leaving reviews at all. It discourages people ultimately from posting their opinions about books, and unless you have been specifically tagged as an author, which generally will not happen, these reviews are not for the author to read. They're for opening discussions with other readers and reviewers. So if you take it so personally as an author that you feel the need to argue, I do think that that is where people have a point about authors needing to stay out of these spaces, because this is what I think that this is what creates this sort of animosity and this divide. It's generally just people not being respectful of other people. A reviewer or a reader that posts a review anyway that's critical of a book or didn't like the story, and maybe they say something like, I thought this book was terrible, it was badly written, the story was all over the place, this character was terrible, blah 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 blah. That is not an attack on the author, unless the reviewer specifically makes mention of the author and attacks the author. But generally speaking, they're just talking about the book, and people have got every right to not like your book, and they also have every right to talk about not liking your book. In bookish spaces, this has become a thing now. I've seen authors, you know, repost bad reviews with the reviewer's name still on it, and then pointing out everything that's wrong with the reviewer's critique, like, oh well, they just didn't get the book, or blah 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 blah. And then if this author has a lot of fans, then the fans tend to dogpile the reviewer, and they'll start being like, well, this person must be stupid if maybe the messaging went over their head and things like that. So I completely understand why a lot of people feel like there should just be a hard line and authors just need to stay away from all of this stuff. And I do agree, authors shouldn't be commenting. However, I don't necessarily agree with authors not being allowed in these spaces, with the idea that the reviews are only for the readers and not for the authors. They are mostly for other readers. Obviously, if you're recommending a book you like, it's, you know, and other people take your word for it, they value your opinion, they might buy the book, so that shouldn't be for an author's gain. That should be genuine love of the book. On one of these videos, I asked a question in the comments because it was a really good video. I can't remember which one it was. I binged a whole bunch of this topic, so I'll link it if I can find it. I'm so sorry to the creator if I can't find this video, but in the comments I asked, I am a book reviewer, and when indie authors send me a book review request, generally speaking, once I've written the review, I'll email them again and just say, hi, I've got around to reading your book now, here's a link for the review. And I also I didn't include all of this in my question. I said that. And also, if I didn't really like the book, or it wasn't my cup of tea, or I've got critiques in my review, I will let the reviewer know that, let the author, sorry, know that in the email. I'll just say, hi, I've read and reviewed your book. Here's a link for the review. Just a heads up, I was critical of these things, or this book wasn't really for me, so I did reflect that. I tried to be fair, da 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 da. But I just give them a heads up that they're not going to read a glowing review when they get to it. And that's the way that I like to run my website, because I started Happy Goat Horror because I just wanted to talk about books that I really, really love, but I also wanted to create a space for an inclusive space for everybody. I wanted authors to feel welcome to come there. I wanted authors to recommend books they like to me. I wanted readers to enjoy the reviews. And I always tag authors on social media, especially if I've written a really nice review. I really liked the book and I can't wait to tell the author that I liked their book. I like having two-way relationship. Like, you can't expect to always have a relationship with an author, obviously, but where possible, if you're connected on social media and stuff, I always love to tell authors how much I loved their book. And let them know that I've written a nice review of it, because as an author, that is so gratifying for me. If I am ever contacted in any way by someone who's read something that I wrote and they told me that they really enjoyed it, or it meant something to them, that's it's so encouraging, especially as an indie that makes no money from writing. You know, everyone says, like, you should be writing for yourself, and you are, and I know authors that are outstanding that make no money, and they've been putting out a novel a year for 15 years. There is the love of writing that's driving everybody, but it is such a nice, encouraging boost that lets you know that it's worthwhile for other people sometimes when people compliment you. So I feel like I've gone into this sort of grey area. So anyway, sorry, I went off on a tangent. So I asked in the comments, I email the authors to let them know I've reviewed it and I give them the link. And the reason I do that is because they have requested a review from me. I don't do that if it's a book that I just picked up that was on my personal TBR. I won't go out of my way to email an author and say, hi, I've written a review of your book that you didn't ask for, here's the link to the review. But if it's someone who asked for it and presumably they're waiting and hoping I'm going to post one, then I'm happy to let them know I did. So I asked if I should be doing that, if what the opinion was, and somebody commented saying absolutely not. The authors need to stay out of those spaces, the review isn't for them. And I really valued the feedback, and I thought about this for a few weeks, but I respectfully disagree. I don't see any reason why I shouldn't invite an author into any sort of conversation. In fact, if you follow this channel, you'll know that I very often interview authors whose books I've read and liked. I've got to speak to some of my favourite authors out of mainstream publishing, people who are traditionally published with agents. I mean, people like Tim Leben, Ramsey Campbell, Rachel Harrison. I have been so lucky. Adam Net. Oh, I'm not going to start listing them all. I've got an interviews playlist on my channel. If you're interested, you can have a little look. It's got a mix of traditionally published and mostly indie authors on there, and other types of creators as well. I very much value like constant discussion between everybody, so I guess I'm kind of like on a muddly middle ground with it. I think that if you are an author, I think you should feel free to be in reader spaces, especially if you are a reader. If you are a reader and you want to participate in bookish conversations, but just be very aware of how you're conducting yourself and how you are making yourself look, you know, in terms of how you are communicating with people who have talked about your work. So if you're in agreement or disagreement, I would like to now continue on to things, other things that I think help build good relationships between authors and readers.
Editing Kaylee here. I'm talking about the Books of Horror Facebook group now. I was not aware when I recorded this that a whole bunch of controversy has kicked off about that particular group, but for the sake of this video, I've left it in just to use the book group as an example of groups.
There are a lot of horror readers, fans, people who love books in that group. People post in there every single day about books they've read that they love, and there are a lot of authors in that group that weigh in on conversations about other books. Sometimes they'll appear and say, oh, thank you very much for complimenting my book, and for the most part what I've seen is that this is a very positive experience for everybody involved. Authors are every now and then tagged in something, or they'll just see it in the group, someone's raving about their book, that's going to make them feel good, and then readers get to speak to authors. If an author appears in that group and people are a fan, it makes the authors accessible to them to have a chat about their work. So I think that that's a lovely thing. Again, community, I think that that is a really, really lovely thing. Now, building on sort of like making a community space out of this, there are some things that authors definitely shouldn't do, and after I've talked about that, my opinion on that, I'm going to go on to some of the panic that I personally have as a reviewer, from a reviewer perspective, just so that people are aware of this, because this is where a reviewer-reader relationship comes into play. But first, so let me just look at my notepad here. Okay, so things that authors do that damage their relationships with reviewers specifically. I've made a whole video on how to get book reviews and things like that before, but I think that this needs to be reiterated, mostly for me, because this is something that keeps coming up for me recently, and it's making me feel like an asshole. But I'm only one person running my website. I don't make any money from it at all. It's a passion thing. It's a labor of love. I absolutely love doing all of my goating activities, as I call them, and I don't like letting people down, and I do not like feeling like I'm being mean to people or ignorant, but I have to ignore people sometimes, and it's because of as a reviewer, and it's because of these things. So here are like the top things off the top of my head that authors do that sort of potentially damage their relationship with reviewers, and then effectively getting more reviews on their books. The first thing is, bad conduct on social media, all of the stuff I've just said. If you're ranting about bad reviews and you're naming the reviewers and letting your readers pile on them and stuff, like that will put me off. If I get a review request from an author and I see the name and I recognize the name and I realize it's because of something like that, I will not review their book. Only because, what if I don't like it? I'm not going to lie and cushion my thoughts. I'm going to write a critical review if I don't like the book. And then are they going to come for me? Are they going to start slating me? Are they going to tag either me personally or Happy Go Horror somewhere? And I just don't want the headache of it. So if you're someone that does that, even if you've never done it to me, if I see you've done it to other readers or reviewers, especially if it's just readers, people that don't even have websites and they're just posting their thoughts on Goodreads, then maybe they're a little bit less used to this kind of backlash. I just assume that that's a risk with you, and I don't want to take it. And then outside of that, something that has this is the thing that has most often made me move a book that I was going to review out of my review pile and into my trash email folder, is people chasing me up. If people who run blogs and websites will normally put in the policy, please don't chase me up asking if I've read your book yet. I see it over and over and over again when I'm requesting reviews. It shouldn't actually need to be said. Reviewers shouldn't have to ask people, please don't follow me up over and over, asking me if I read your book yet, because if somebody agrees to read your book and consider reviewing it, that's all they've agreed to, is that they will consider reviewing it. They haven't promised you they're going to review it, and they haven't promised they're going to give you a good review if they do. And unless they've actually specifically given you a yes, I'll definitely review it, and here's the time frame, it's kind of just tough if you don't see a review appear in what you would consider a timely fashion. Then you kind of have to just let it go. If a reviewer says, oh, feel free to follow up if you haven't seen a review in this long, then I guess you can, but I've never personally seen that, and I have read hundreds of review policies at this point for when I'm requesting reviews. So the reason that this one for me personally is so off-putting about working with an author is because I say working with an author, but actually it's a favor for someone that I don't know. And again, I've opened my website because I want to help promote indie fiction. That's mostly what I talk about. It's mostly indie books, and I really love that, and I have a great passion for it. I think that there's so much great work in indie fiction, and I want to read and promote as many indie authors as I possibly can, because I think that there's room for all of us, but we don't all have budgets for marketing and things like that, and I want to help. But I have stated specifically in my review policy, personally, please do not email me asking if I've read your book yet. And then I even added, because it really stresses me out, because I used to just have please don't do it, and then people kept doing it, so I added it really stresses me out, because I really thought that if people read that, they'd think, oh, okay, don't stress her out. And yet, and I feel really, really mean for doing it, because I used to respond when people would mail me and ask me, oh, have you read my book yet? And they'd be so friendly and phrase it as nicely as possible, but the bottom line is they are chasing me up. And I used to feel really, really pressured and guilty if I hadn't. And like I said, I do have a couple of people that write reviews for the site now, but they're not people that I give a review list to. They just send me reviews of stuff they've read. So it's not like, so all the requests coming in are on me. I'm writing all those reviews, and I've just finished a Read What You Own challenge, and it's taken me 7.5 months, and I've read 75 books that were review requests, and then the other 25 out of the 100 were my personal TBR, and I was hoping to do more for my personal TBR, but I had all these review requests. So when people used to email me asking, oh, have you read it yet, I'd feel really guilty and stressed that I hadn't got to it yet. But I am just one person, and I get review requests every day. There's just no way for me to be able to do these things in a reasonable time frame a lot of the time, which I tell people. So I would apologize, and I'd be like, I'm so sorry, I haven't got to it yet. And then I would start really stressing about, but I try to do them in the order that they've come in, you see, so that's why. But now my mind has changed onto, I have asked you not to do this because it makes me stressed. I'm not being paid, this isn't a job. And then it suddenly occurred to me, like, I would never chase up a reviewer, because that feels very entitled, because you're doing that under the assumption that they're definitely going to review it in the first place. And as I said a few minutes ago, they're not promising that they're definitely going to review it. I'm not promising I'll definitely review it. I've just said I've added it to the TBR pile. That could mean I'll review it or I won't. So now if somebody chases me up asking, I just move the book out of my review pile and the email goes into the trash folder, not the pending reviews folder anymore. I've had a couple of people that have chased me up several times about the same book. And I've even had people say, oh, I know that on your website it says not to do this, but, and that to me just feels, I'm not having a go. If you're an author that's done this to me, we are still friends. I'm just making people aware that this is why I haven't reviewed your book. You know, just please don't do it again. Clean slate from here on out. But moving forward, if people do this about one book, I'm not going to review anything by that author in the future either, because I just don't need this kind of stress. So if that sounds like horrible, I'm so sorry, but I have to have my life outside of my goating stuff as well, and I can't be consumed by, because I feel guilty. I'm a bit of a people pleaser and I don't like letting people down, and that's how it makes me feel, but I have to, you know, put myself first sometimes. So that's one of the worst things. In general, ignoring a review policy is a bad look. You know, if there's a review policy, it's because people need things done a certain way. I have a review policy. If people don't give me the information that I asked for in the review policy, again, I don't review their book, because I just think I'm not going to give up days of my time if you couldn't be bothered to give up a few minutes of your time adhering to my review policy. And the other thing as well, this is the last thing I'm going to say on this, is if a review blog or website says I am closed to reviews, don't send an email going, hi, I know you're closed to reviews, but can you add this book to your list when you're open? Because that defeats the point of being closed to reviews if you're still adding things. The answer is going to be no. If you're closed for reviews, you're closed for reviews, and unless the reviewer has specifically at some point said to you, oh, I'm closed for reviews, if it says I'm closed for reviews, don't worry, send me something anyway, because I'll take something from you, like, that's different. But in general, don't do that, because that just shows that you have acknowledged that you read no and you tried to go around it. It just feels a bit disrespectful. So again, I'm not having to go at people. Me personally, clean slate from here on out. If you're someone that's done this but you would still like to have reviews of me, please feel free to resubmit your review requests and things like that. But yeah, these are just general don'ts and things that I think, you know, it's basically just manners and just listening and reading and following what people have asked for. And I've built some really nice relationships with reviewers, people who talked about my books, and I would like to think I've made friends with these people over time and everything. And it's, you know, it's nice. It's, again, community. Okay, so reviewer perils, like things that I think things that I worry about will damage my relationship with readers. So like people that I'm reviewing books for, mostly I'm talking to readers, people, like-minded people who enjoy horror fiction in my case, and there are a whole bunch of things that I really worry about, and I'm increasingly worried because there seems to be more and more to worry about. So and the reason I worry about these things is because there seems to be like nobody gives the benefit of the doubt to people anymore if what they've done seems wrong. So let me elaborate. This is a bit vague. Let me elaborate. So okay, so a lot of people are being revealed to be some sort of scumbag. Now this will include people that work for certain presses, editors, authors very often, and I would like to say that generally speaking, these reports of this sort of like bad players, you know, in the bookish spaces, I do think that they're sort of few and far between in the horror spaces. Luckily, like, I don't see a lot of it, but I can't possibly know every single person that's done something bad, like a podcast host or something. So when people send me their review requests, I'll look them up, and you know, if nothing comes up that's like a glaring red flag to me, I just assume that they're fine and I go ahead and review their book. And what I'm worried about, because it will inevitably happen to me, in fact it recently happened, but no one piled on me for this, what I'm worried about is that I'm going to accidentally review a book by someone who has been cancelled for some reason. And I don't believe in cancel culture, but I just mean like someone who has legitimately done something bad that I wouldn't normally want to associate with myself with. Like say, for example, let's say someone's been really homophobic publicly. I would never ever knowingly agree to review a book by somebody expressing those kinds of views, because they don't align with my views, do not align with what I want Happy Goat Horror to be. I want Happy Goat Horror to be a welcoming place for absolutely everybody. So I'm not gonna like associate myself with people who have got prejudices like that. But sometimes I won't know. There's no way I can possibly know the personal view, especially if people haven't publicly posted and then they post later or something. And I'm always really worried that someone's going to come at me like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to make that kind of mistake that people are going to think that I knew and just did it anyway, and then think that I align my morals with people like that. And the reason that I worry about that is because I think that if people have been following my channel for a while, and if you've watched a lot of my videos, or if you know me in real life, if you've met me at a convention or something and we've hung out, I would like to think that you would assume that I didn't know, because I would like to think that you know that I'm not a homophobe, or I'm bisexual, I'm part of the LGBTQ community, but like I would hope that you would know that that isn't in my character. But not everybody knows me, and the reason that I worry that the assumption is going to be the less generous one of that I knew and I didn't care, is because I've seen it happen to other people, where someone has reviewed a book and there was something shady going on with the press, and then all of a sudden in the comments of their video they're getting people like, I can't believe you would support this press, and this person just reviewed a book and they had no idea. So I think that that's something that can't just be me. I think I've worried about it with my written reviews, but since I've come onto YouTube and then I've started seeing more and more of this, I worried more about it, about being on the receiving end. But the only thing I can do is kind of the due diligence I can do, and if I miss something, well I didn't see it. And then I would like to be informed if you ever see me talk about an author or a press or something and there's something shady like that, I would love for you to tell me, but please tell me in good faith, inform me, but don't attack me over it. And that's how I would encourage people to approach other reviewers as well, because we can't all know everything about everybody. I also really worry because I am dead against AI being used for creative stuff. People will make these little arguments like, oh well, spell and grammar check is AI. Well, yes, obviously not that. That is a tool. But people who are generating books using AI, so they're calling themselves authors and they haven't written the books. Book covers is a big one. I do not agree. I understand why people use AI to make book covers, because if you're paying an artist, it's going to cost you money, and a lot of people don't have it, can't afford it. I would have to think very carefully about my budget for a book cover, and it would be a hit to my finances regardless of the like £100, £200, like that is a lot of money for me. But the problem with using AI to generate a book cover is that it's not for me, it's not so much that you're not paying an artist, and artists deserve to be paid. It's that the AI is generating art and it's using stolen work to generate the art. AI is trained on stuff that already exists, and this is a whole issue at the moment with everyone in every kind of creator, art, books, music, whatever it is. Everyone's work is being stolen to feed these machines now, and that's my issue with it. It's unethical. I think it's unethical. However, I have got a shit eye for this stuff. I don't know what I've seen AI covers and not known that they're AI because of there's so many types of ways and software and stuff to to create art, and there are so many different art styles and stuff. Like, I don't know a lot of the time, and I think that I think that AI book covers is going to be the thing. When someone eventually gets mad at me and they see I've done something, it's going to be because I've reviewed a book with an AI cover and I didn't know, because I don't know how you can know unless the author has told you. I really don't know. Again, if you're aware of it, please let me know if I've done that. But this is something that I worry that is going to make people who watch my videos or people who read my reviews like trust me less, and it will always be an accident if it happens. But yeah, this is the thing I worry about, and I've had conversations with other reviewers that worry about this as well. And then just on like a personal note, things that I worry about are, because I'm friends with a lot of authors, because I am an author, and you know, I've made a lot of relationships and friendships online and through conventions and stuff, and it's my favourite part of, like, outside of like getting to read and write, it's really my favorite thing. These relationships are like really, really important to me, which is why it panics me so much if I don't like a book written by someone that I know, because I often review books by authors that I not only know, I'm acquainted with, but a lot of them I consider friends, and that is so uncomfortable for me. And all I can hope is that they will just understand, and they always do. I haven't yet had somebody fall out with me over me being critical about something in a book, because generally people are reasonable, but that's something that I stress about. And then the only other thing I think I really worry about is when I'm talking about a book and it's written from a perspective that isn't my lived experience. So for example, I have recently been reading so many great stories written by trans authors, and I have found the fiction that I've been reading by trans authors is like, is so, the themes and the way that things are communicated, like the human experience from a trans author's perspective is different. Like I like, they got different lived experiences to me. Like I move through the world in a certain way. I didn't realize how lucky I was to just not have my identity questioned like on a daily basis. And so I think, yeah, exercises in empathy, understanding other people, enjoying some really, really good horror fiction as well, like these are all plus points for me. I worry though that when I talk about books like this, and I talk because I get personal about why I relate to the book, I worry sometimes that I'm talking about things that I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. So a lot of so Mocha Pennington is an author that I absolutely love, and the first story that I read by her was about a trans woman, and it was a horrible horror story, but it was so good. And she finds a surgeon who is less than reputable, shall we say, and this really taught me a lesson, first of all, about the medical and surgical fear that trans people must have, because there's a lot, you know, there's a lot of medical stuff that people have got to deal with, and I'm someone who's had surgery and been afraid of going into surgery. And also her depiction of sort of the female experience from a trans woman's perspective, I found it very relatable. I'm a cis person, but this like feeling of not fitting into the right box as a woman, I did relate to that, because I very often feel a bit like duck out of water or something around other people. And when I say things like that, I really worry that I'm just like, oh yeah, being trans is exactly the same as being cis. Like, I'm afraid it's going to come across like that. So what I mostly worry about is that when I'm like relating to these stories and I'm talking about like the identity of the characters, if I don't share that identity, I worry that I either sound like I'm talking complete shit, or that I'm I don't know, like I worry that I'm getting something wrong, and when I'm relating to it, I'm saying, oh, we're all the same, we all have the same struggles, and that's not what I mean. But like, I don't script my videos, so sometimes, as you can see, it comes out as in a ramble. I hope that this video was enjoyable for you. I would love to know any thoughts about any of these topics. If anyone can alleviate my worries about if I accidentally review something I shouldn't, that is something I think about more and more as technology grows and people get more angry on the internet all the time. And yeah, I'd love to know what you think about the sort of like relationship between like reviewers and authors and readers. I would love to know your thoughts on that, because I'm hoping that there are people that agree with me. But if I am wrong and everyone tells me that I'm wrong, and maybe I shouldn't be emailing people the review links or something, I mean, I think I'm going to keep doing it though, because is a space for authors as well, Happy Go Horror. So I don't know, but yeah, I will listen. I will listen though. So I genuinely, I would really love your feedback. Thank you for sticking around if you've stayed to the end of the video. And I'm trying to figure out how to make proper intros and outros. I realise that they are despicably inconsistent on my channel at the moment. I'm working on that. If you have any tips on that, I'd be grateful for that too. I will see you in the next one. Bleed.